You okay today?
Yeah.
Good. Hey, the reason for the stop is you got to signal your intention to get to the right lane, okay? In the state of Oklahoma, the left lane is a continuing lane, okay? And the right lane, you got to signal your intention to turn. You got a driver's license on you today?
Welcome back, everyone, to another Downward Day. And today, I'm climbing up the continental shelf in eastern Colorado. Yesterday, I drove through the beautiful, scenic Oklahoma Panhandle while complaining about iDubbbz. You know, got a video recorded there, feeling good about it, but it wasn't all fun and games yesterday because I'm not sure how many of you are aware of the geography of this area, but it is very rural. It is one of the most empty parts of the contiguous United States. And with that comes small towns, very spread out settlements, and certain treacherous police departments who will try as they may to ruin your day. So today I'm going to be talking about a little incident that occurred between me and the Oklahoma State Police while riding in the middle of nowhere on the road. And hopefully this video can serve as a cautionary tale for some of you to watch out, watch your back when you're out in these rural areas. It can be easy to believe that there's no one else around and that you can just get away with whatever you want. But that's exactly what certain clans of local police departments want you to believe. So yesterday I'm heading west on the Oklahoma Panhandle as part of a 5-hour drive heading out to near the state border. And I believe we're between the cities of Woodward and Guymon. So it was probably when we were about halfway between those two towns when we passed through a really small, bare-bones, rinky-dink town, which for some reason had a bunch of police officers stationed within it. Now, if you walk away from this video with one thing, it should be this. It is imperative that you reduce your speed while heading in to these small towns. And it can be police car passing by right now, actually. See, not a car went by for the last 5 minutes, but cop right there. You gotta be on your toes. You gotta be on your toes. There's a lot more out here than you would believe based on the completely depopulated nature of this Western American landscape. But anyway, you can't be complacent when out on these rural roads in America. These small towns will come up quick. It'll be about half a mile of clearance where you probably have to reduce your speed from 80 miles an hour to about 30 or 25. And these heavy speed reduction zones are a hotbed. They're a honeypot for basically getting you pulled over and giving you a $100 ticket in some weird random jurisdiction that's like 1,000 miles away from where you actually live. Pay attention to when civilization starts to rear its head again and you're entering a small town. You will likely have to reduce your speed by 50 miles an hour within a half a mile stretch of road. And it can sneak up on you real quick. And if you're not paying attention, if you're just zoned out, spaced out, driving in the middle of some hour-long trek, you will get caught, and you will get caught speeding in those towns. They will have police officers posted up. The local police, they don't want all these dirty out-of-towners speeding through their home, so they will be quick. They will be quick to hand out tickets. You must reduce your speed. It reminds me of when I was hanging out with the NASCAR Weekly podcast people ahead of the 2022 Daytona 500. We were heading back from the racetrack that night, and whoever happened to be driving just did not slow down fast enough while entering a small Florida town, and they got busted. And I think luckily they got away with a warning, but oftentimes you're not so lucky. You will be on the hook for a big fine in some place 1,000 miles away from where you live, making it all the more difficult to actually fight it in court. You're going to be in a place with different laws, slightly different statutes that you may have never heard of, as was the case with myself. So I knew at this point to not speed through the town, and they did not book me for speeding. I reduced my speed like normal, but man, this small, tiny town was just infested with cops. Infested. And it just so happens that as I'm driving through, one of them pulls into the road and starts following me. They basically just start following me for miles. I just spent the next 10 minutes mirror driving, looking at this cop behind me. Now, I was immediately getting a little bit paranoid because it's quite unusual for a police officer to just stay behind someone. Usually they have some place to be. If they're actually headed out somewhere, there's some kind of sense of urgency. They will pass you, they will get around you and continue down the road at a much greater speed just so they can get to wherever they're needed faster. But this police officer was following me for miles and miles, just on my bumper. It was almost like I was being stalked. And at this point, I'm aware that I'm under the gun, basically. The cop is behind me. So I'm not speeding, I'm not doing anything, I'm driving smoothly. So I'm being trailed and tracked by this police officer until we get to about 7 or 8 miles from out of that small town. And at that moment, as I'm going over the crest of a hill, I see it. I see another police officer, another police car posted up off the shoulder of the oncoming lane, facing me. And within 5 seconds, after seeing that second officer, the officer who was trailing me turned his lights on and started pulling me over. That second officer who was posted up on the side of the road, he was definitely giving some kind of signal, some kind of indication saying, yeah, green light, go on and get him. Because it was within like an instant. I turned to look at the officer posted up on the side of the road, and then I look back in my rearview mirror to see the squad car's lights are on, trying to get me to pull over. So I pull over, and I'm sitting here completely baffled, wondering like what in the world they could have got me on. I was deliberately driving as conservatively as possible, driving under the speed limit, driving smoothly. I'm in a rent-a-car, so I assume all the tags and license plates and brake lights are up. And it was in the middle of the day anyway, so I wouldn't even know how they notice a taillight being out or any sort of damage or anything to the vehicle that would be considered an infraction. But here's what they tell me. The officer comes up to my window and here's what they tell me. You're not going to believe this. So apparently, when you're in Oklahoma and you're on a 1-lane highway and then it transitions into 2 lanes, as in a new lane materializes and a new lane gets added on your route, you are required by law, and this is what he told me, you are required by law to signal and enter the right lane. I had obviously never heard of this before. It doesn't really make sense. It's not a thing in Florida. It's not a thing in most other states, I'd imagine. But apparently it's this really specific law in Oklahoma where when a passing lane opens up, when that second lane opens up to the right, you are required to, 1, merge to the right lane unless you are specifically passing, and 2, signal that you are merging into that right lane. And keep in mind, this is like not the same standard of just like switching lanes without signaling. It is a new lane that is forming. It is a new lane that is materializing in your path. And out of the very nature of the road design, there's not going to be anyone in it. You're not going to be endangering anyone. It's a brand new lane that appears on your right and you just slide into it from the existing single lane. It just seems like signaling is completely unnecessary in that scenario, because if a car is trying to pass you, they'll just keep to the left in the left lane and pass you. They'll pass you in the passing lane. If you're slower passive traffic, you just veer to the right. It doesn't seem like that interaction is necessary. It doesn't seem like it conveys any sort of information. But apparently it's on the books. Apparently it's on the books in Oklahoma. You must signal when a new lane opens up. You must both go into the right lane, unless you're passing, and signal when you go into that lane. And by the way, these secondary passing lanes, they open up all the time, at least on the road I was on. I'm going to try to include some time-lapse footage to give you an idea of what it's like. These things are basically appearing every 3 minutes, so it's creating like an active situation, some active maintenance that you have to pay attention to on the road, saying like, okay, it's splitting to 2 lanes again, got to signal over. That's, I guess, at least the expectation that's trying to be created by this law. Although, as we'll soon discuss, I don't believe that this law is in place to protect anybody. But yeah, the officer pulled me over and cited that as the reason. The citation is under the category of changing lanes unsafely, even though I don't know how you can even classify that as changing lanes when the lane is brand new and you just go into it. You're not changing lanes. You're not cutting anyone off. It's a brand new lane. There's no one there. You can just easily visually register that. But that's apparently what they tried to get me on. Changing lanes unsafely. Now, the officer rolled down the window. He could see that I was probably traveling and whatever. I guess he decided he liked me, so he let me off with a warning. I really think that maybe if I looked a little different, if I looked a little bit more unsavory or squirrely or whatever, I would have definitely been forced to pay a ticket. Some stupid ticket in like the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, that I would have had to pay and basically had my money extorted. Now, those of you who watch the channel will know that this is not my first time getting pulled over in recent months. I got pulled over down in St. Lucie County for allegedly not moving over, allegedly not adhering to the move over law for officers. And I have a whole video complaining about that if you're interested. But I will say that my experience with dealing with that officer gave me a little bit more confidence with dealing with this one. And I will say that this time around in this incident versus the one back in November, in this incident, I was a lot more emotionally calm. I was a lot more emotionally pleasant, and I pretty much expressed that non-verbally when the officer came here. I don't even necessarily know if I was thinking about even doing that on purpose, if I was just putting on an act, because maybe it's a thing where the more you get pulled over, the less upset it makes you. I know it's probably a stretch, but I'm sure if you keep getting pulled over for BS reasons, you start to get pretty upset after the 5th or 6th time. But this is my 2nd time in 6 months or so. So I was a bit more prepared. I was able to keep my composure a little bit better. Tone, I think, is important. When the officer first rolls down your window, you can't really be indignant. I don't think you can be indignant or expressing displeasure or really any sort of sour attitude, because in the cop's view, he's either going to give you a ticket or not. And if you're cantankerous, at least if I was in the cop's position, that would give me a little bit more ammunition to try to gouge this person out of a little more of their money. Bad attitude. And it's hard not to have a bad attitude. It's hard not to have a bad attitude in that situation because it sucks. And in this case, like, I knew the second I saw that other cop posted up, and then immediately the guy who's been following me for miles turns on his lights and pulls me over. I knew it was a setup. Obvious. Clean as day. And you don't want to be put in dishonest situations like that. And that's to even consider that getting a ticket is the worst case scenario, which it is not. When I was out there in the middle of nowhere, it was in the back of my mind that there's a reasonable chance that this thing could get ugly. I could get severely hurt or taken away and have my entire day ruined, life ruined, and no one would be around to see it. No one would be around to witness it. They could have your way with you. And especially, I guess, if you're a woman, the 3% of the women that watch this channel, that's definitely something you got to pay attention to. These cops out here in the sticks, they're bored. There isn't much crime out there to actually police, so they need stuff to fill their time. And I don't know. I think most police are generally fine. It's more so the institution that I have huge problems with, but the actual individuals behind the uniform and badge, I think they're generally fine, most of them. But you'd be naive to believe that at least some of the police are not sociopathic, that they're not in that position because they enjoy pushing people around and they enjoy having their way with powerless citizens. So that was definitely a possibility that was going through my head as this guy stopped me in basically middle of nowhere conditions, much like we're going through right now. But I guess he took a look at me. My girlfriend was here. I guess he could tell we're going places, and he decided to let me off with a warning. And I genuinely think that is a decision, at least in this specific scenario, with this whole setup, this whole traffic setup, where they're trying to get you on the most minor infraction that no one would even know if they didn't live here. I bet most people who live in Oklahoma don't even know that that's an actual law. I was driving behind people on the road who were going to the right lane without signaling. It was like most people in that Oklahoma plates, I assume they live here. I truly believe that's a decision they make as soon as you roll down the window and they take one look at you. If you look the certain way they like, and you appear non-threatening enough, and you appear just non-belligerent, non-aggressive, then maybe I think they decide to let you off with a warning. But if you have the wrong look, if you don't have a certain appearance of the way they want people to look in that certain area, then you might be on the hook for a ticket or worse. That is my impression. That is my impression of the situation. Additionally, it could probably also be some sort of simple means of getting you pulled over and basically searching your vehicle and finding some sort of illegal whatever, illegal firearms, illegal drugs, and then hauling you away to jail. and making you a prisoner in the state and just putting you in the prison labor situation. A nice little foot in the door saying like, oh, you didn't signal, you changed lanes unsafely. Oh, let me look inside your vehicle. What is that? What is that you got there, sir? That is not allowed in this county. That is not allowed in this state. You're gonna have to come with me back to the jailhouse. So that could very well be another motivation, another reason for them pulling you over for just the most menial, tiny infraction. It's a foot in the door to try to get you on the hook for a much more serious offense. Could be that, could just be extorting ticket money. I don't know, but it's an unnerving situation to be in because they could basically do whatever you want. There's no one around to see, no one around to keep anyone accountable. They could do what they want. That guy could have given me a $500 ticket and there would have been nothing I could have done about it. But I remained calm. I maintained my composure. I put on a pleasant exterior appearance, pleasant attitude, pleasant tone, and he let me off with a warning. And we were able to go after 15 minutes and continue on with our day. So I'm grateful. I'm definitely glad I did not get a ticket. I would be feeling a lot worse right now. I'd be feeling a lot more despair and rage if I'd actually gotten a ticket for switching lanes unsafely, aka not turning on your signal to enter a brand new lane. So I guess I'm glad, I was fortunate in this case that this officer was one of the good ones. He was probably following police orders from the station, orders from whatever jurisdiction he was representing to go out there and enforce that whole contrived setup. They're probably running cycles all day because when he was done with me and when I finally got it drove away, he turned around back to that small town where he first started trailing me in the first place. So he had nowhere to go. He wasn't going anywhere in the direction I was headed while he was following me. He was simply just trailing me and watching me and waiting until I slipped up. And I did, on a law, on a technicality that I had no idea even existed. But yeah, I had to go with him into the squad car, the passenger seat of the squad car, for about 10 minutes while he typed up the report. I made some small talk, I was friendly, I put on the southern accent. That's another thing. That's another thing y'all gotta do. You gotta get a nice southern accent, a nice southern drawl. It's usually in these rural places where people talk like this out in Oklahoma, southern Colorado, definitely the deep south. I heard that there's a lot of big problems with local police departments pulling people over and just being real monsters about it out there, just being greedy with pulling people over out there in deep south Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. You got to put on your southern drawl, especially when going through these parts. It makes you more endearing. It makes it seem like you're more of a local. So when it comes to improving your odds with these officers, you got to put on that drawl. When you say, anything wrong, officer? Don't come out there saying like, officer, is there something wrong? No, you got to put on the drawl. You got to butter them up. The South is full of buttermilk biscuits, buttermilk pancakes, buttermilk grits. You got to put on the drawl. That'll make you seem more local. That'll make you seem less like an outsider. And I'm sure they were targeting outsiders because this rent-a-car, ironically, even though I rented it in the middle of Dallas, Texas, it still got the Florida plates. So I guess with this car, Florida never really left me, and I had to tell them I'm from Florida. But I told them I'm from North Florida. A bit more good old boys out there, A bit more good old boys. Put on the drawl, say I'm from North Florida. And yeah, I'm sure it goes a long way. It goes a long way to make you more friendly. I don't know how it is out in the north, out by like Minnesota. Sorry, officer, if I did something wrong. I'm not as good at that accent because I haven't spent enough time around there to really absorb the way they speak. But I have spent a lot of time in the South, so you got to put it on. You got to turn it not too much to make it sound insincere. You don't want to sound like what's the guy from Looney Tunes, Yosemite Sam. You don't want to exactly turn it up that much, but a nice little tasteful southern drawl. That's a pretty nice little heuristic device for you guys out there. If you get pulled over in a rural, especially southern area, rural western area, that can help you, I think. I really think it goes a long way. I really think it does more than what you think it does. It sounds stupid, it sounds idiotic, but I really think it will paint you as less of an outsider and therefore make you seem like less of a hostile presence in this officer's life. And hopefully it'll help you get away with a warning instead of a fine, which is what we all really want out here once you wind up in that situation. But yeah, I made some small talk with him. Talked about myself, asked him about his day. Just try to be a little more human. It's a scary, threatening situation for you, obviously, but you just gotta act like a person. You gotta act like someone who the guy probably would feel a little bad about giving a ticket to. You know, talk about how you're going through life, bought and sold a new house, working hard on these videos, talked about my career. I even showed him my YouTube channel. I wouldn't have done it unprompted, but he asked me specifically for my YouTube channel after I told him I make YouTube videos for a living. So he literally looked up and Googled my YouTube channel and pulled it up on the squad car computer. That was definitely a surreal, uncanny moment. But he asked me for my channel. I showed it to him. I didn't show him Downward Diary. He might not have felt so good about watching that certain video on Downward Diary, but I showed him Emblem, and I showed him, oh, here's an example. Small town, it goes down to 40 real quick. Slow down immediately. Prime example right there. But yeah, I showed the officer emblem, and should be nothing objectionable there, I hope. But in the moment, you just want to make yourself seem like a real person and not seem like a squirrely criminal. That's basically what you want to do. Talk about him. Talk about yourself. Talk about your family. Talk about how you're not antisocial. And it will suck in that situation. It will be like having a gun to your head. But you just gotta maintain your composure, not be nervous, not be awkward, because that's just gonna make you look suspicious in his mind. And that's gonna be like, acting awfully strange, might have to search your vehicle. And that is not what you want. You want to just end the interaction as soon as possible, and you achieve that by acting normal, or at least relatively normal. Act friendly. Ask questions. Ask him about his day. Talk about yourself. Talk about your life. Paint yourself as like a real person with responsibilities, who have people who depend on them, people who love them. It will humanize you. It will make you seem less like a threat, less like a criminal, and it will probably make them reconsider giving you a ticket if they're still mulling it over. So I made some small talk. I kept my cool. I acted friendly. Despite my seething problems with the police, I put it away. Just talk to the man. Even if you like hate the police and have a huge problem with the police, just try to look past it. Look past the badge. Imagine he's just a guy in a bar wearing regular clothes. You're gonna have to LARP a bit. You're gonna have to use your imagination a bit, because it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to direct your attention that way when you're in such a compromising situation. But you just gotta try to do it. Just try to talk to the man, talk to the person, be friendly, be pleasant, and hopefully you can get off and continue with your day. And this won't work for everyone. There's cops out there that are just gonna be incorrigible. They're just not gonna be able to be reasoned with. They're gonna be having a bad day. They're just gonna be a bad person, even a bad person who's looking to push people around, and nothing you do or say is ever gonna remedy that situation. Some cops are just out to get you. They have the prime directive of handing out tickets, and they're gonna be antisocial, sociopathic, and they won't be able to be reasoned with. So hopefully, when you wind up in these situations, you don't end up with the absolutely vile officer. You wind up with the more normal one, who can be more easily reasoned with, who can maybe have some sympathy extracted out of them. It's a roll of the dice either way, but once you're in that situation, once you're pulled over, you have to just hope you get lucky. You have to hope that you get one of the good ones. And fortunately, this officer was generally fine. Let me off with a warning and let me on my way, and went back into that small podunk town to probably hand out more tickets to the next guy and decide whether the next person was worthy of getting a ticket or a warning. So look, if you happen to be out there driving in rural America, heed my warning. The cops are gonna be out there, and they're gonna be trying to get you. It can look empty. It can look completely deserted. You might not even see a house for 50 miles, but the police will be there, and you have to drive as if they're there. You have to drive as if over the next crest of the hill, there's gonna be a cop set up, just waiting to pull you over on some kind of BS minor infraction that shouldn't even be a thing. That's only on the books because some police chief, some head of police snuck it in there so it can make it easier for smaller police departments to hand out tickets and to extort money out of people. There are bad, treacherous police departments out there, especially in these rural areas where they got nothing to do, they're bored all day, and they have to find something to fill their time. And that something is usually finding outsiders, finding the outsider, finding the out-of-towner, following them, and then just waiting for them to slip up. So if you're out in rural America driving on a big road trip or commuting or whatever, you gotta watch out. You gotta be on your toes. Do not be complacent. Recognize that even when it seems like no one else may be around, that's what the cops want you to believe. They want you to start speeding. They want you to start going nuts. They want you to start driving recklessly, because that's where they can get you and get a pretty good chunk of change out of you. The open roads, the wide open expanse in many rural parts of America, it may seem like freedom. It may seem like a window to freedom, but just like many other things in this country, it's just an illusion. It's just what they want you to think. And really, you're no more free out there than in the big city. So next time you go out on the roads, be safe, keep your eyes open, and I guess remember to switch lanes into a new lane that appears for some reason, because that's a law in Oklahoma. And hopefully, if you wind up in the unfortunate situation where you have been pulled over after doing seemingly nothing wrong, you can keep your cool, you can maintain a pleasant tone, and you can get out of it with a warning. You know, I really enjoyed the drive through Oklahoma. It was beautiful, and it's a shame that this experience had to taint that for me quite a bit. But at least for now, I'm in a new state, and I likely won't have to deal with that officer in that jurisdiction for a long time coming.